The development of the Spirit through Reincarnations. The Third Testament. Revelations of Jesus Christ. Chapter 30. The Law of Evolution. I say to you that it is necessary for humanity to know that its spirit has come many times to earth, and that still they have not been able to arise along the pathway of my law in order to reach the summit of the mountain. Why, if humanity has seen the development of science and the discovery of things they would not have believed earlier, does it resist the natural evolution of the spirit? Why are they obstinate in what makes them remain stationary and lethargic? Why have they not wished to glimpse eternal life? Understand that although creation appears to have been completed, all things continue to evolve, transform, and become more perfect. Could your spirit escape that divine law? No, my children. No one can say the last word about the spiritual, about science, or about life, for they are works of mine, which have no ending. How many men, based on the knowledge they have achieved, believe themselves to have greatness of spirit, but to me are like some children standing still on the road to their evolution? They should realize that it is not only through the development of the mind that the evolution of the spirit is achieved, but through the all-around development of their being, and there are many gifts needed to evolve in order to achieve completeness. That is why I instituted the reincarnation of the spirit as one of my laws of love and justice, in order to provide it with a longer road that would give it the opportunities necessary to achieve its perfection. Each existence is only a brief lesson, since otherwise the opportunity for a man to include in it the fulfillment of all my law would be very short. However, it is necessary that you understand the meaning of this life in order to take from it its essence and to achieve its harmony, which is the basis of human perfection. Then you will be able to pass to a higher plane, until you arrive to the spiritual life. There I have kept many lessons that I must teach you, and many revelations that I must still make to you. Why is it that while all things grow, unceasingly transform, develop, and become more perfect, your spirit alone remains stagnant throughout the centuries? Since you have discovered and learned much through the sciences, you do not ignore the incessant evolution that exists in all the beings of creation. I wish you to understand that you must not leave your spirit abandoned to that backwardness in the stagnation into which you have kept it for so long, and that you must struggle to achieve harmony with all that surrounds you, so that the day might come when nature, instead of hiding its secrets, reveals them, and the elements, instead of being hostile, become your servants, collaborators, and brothers. The resurrection of the flesh, properly understood. Now the world will know the truth about the resurrection of the flesh, which is the reincarnation of the spirit. Reincarnate, to return to the material world, to be born again as a man. The emergence of the spirit in a human body for the continuation of a mission. That is the truth about the resurrection of the flesh, of which your elders have spoken, giving it interpretations that were as twisted as they were absurd. Reincarnation is a gift that God has conceded to your spirit, so that it is never limited by the smallness of the material form, by its ephemeral existence on the earth, or by its natural weaknesses, but rather because the spirit proceeds from a superior nature. It may use as many material forms as are necessary for carrying out its great missions in the world. Through this gift, the spirit demonstrates its immense superiority over the flesh, over death, and over all that is earthly, defeating death, surviving from one body to another, to as many as may be entrusted to it, the conqueror of time, obstacles, and temptations. How could you ever believe that on the day of judgment, the bodies of the dead will be resurrected and be united to their spirits in order to enter the kingdom of God? How can you interpret in that manner what you were taught in former times? The flesh is of this world, and here it remains, while the spirit arises free and returns to the existence from where it emerged. That which is born of the flesh is flesh. That which is born of my spirit is spirit. The resurrection of the flesh is the reincarnation of the spirit. And if some believe that to be a human theory and others believe it to be a new revelation, verily I say to you that I began to make it known to the world since the beginning of mankind. Proof of it you can find in the text of the scriptures, which are a testimony of my works. This term, known from the old creed of Christianity, was written down by the Council of Nicaea in a time where the partially accepted teaching of reincarnation was condemned as heresy by Emperor Justinian, 553 years after Christ. With that, the reincarnation of the spirit in the flesh became the resurrection of the flesh. However, during this era, the revelation has reached your spirit in a greater level of evolution. Soon, it will be justly regarded as one of the most rightful and loving laws of the Creator. Disregard the belief that you had about the Day of Judgment, which is not a day like yours, because it is a period, and the end of the world is not the end of the planet where you live, but of the egotistical life you have created on it. The mystery of the resurrection of the flesh has been clarified by the revelation of the reincarnation of the spirit. Today, you realize that the goal of this law of love and justice is for the perfection of the spirit, so that it will never be lost, because it will always find an open door as an opportunity which the Father offers for its salvation. My judgment for every spirit, by reason of this law, is perfect and inexorable. Only I know how to judge you, for each destiny is incomprehensible to men. Thus, no one is censored or exposed because the others. And after losing themselves in sin, from so many struggles and vicissitudes and much wandering, the spirits will come before me, filled with wisdom through their experience, purified by pain, elevated by their merits, weary from their long pilgrimage, but simple and joyful as children. The differentiated state of the development of the spirits. It has been a long while since your spirit emanated from me. Nevertheless, not everyone has progressed in the same way along the spiritual path. All destinies are different, although they lead you toward the same goal. To some are reserved some ordeals, and to others different ones. One child travels one path, and another will follow a different course. Neither have all of you emerged to this existence at the same instant, nor will you return at the same moment. Some travel ahead, and others behind, but the goal awaits everyone. No one knows who is near, nor who is distant, because you are still small to have this knowledge. You are human, and your vanity would lead you astray. At all times, even the remotest of human history, you have had examples of men of elevated spirit. How do you explain to yourselves the fact that there have been men with evolved spirits since the earliest times, if before they had not passed through successive reincarnations that helped them to elevate themselves? It is because the spirit is not born at the same time as the shell, nor did the beginning of humanity coincide with that of the spirit. Truly, I tell you, not a single spirit has ever come to this world without having existed first in the beyond. And who among you can measure or know the time that he has lived in other mansions before coming to dwell on the earth? While the spirit is united with the material body, it is unaware of the merits it has achieved in past lives. However, it does know that it possesses eternal life, and that it will continually evolve in pursuit of summit. but is presently unaware of what level it has reached. Your mind does not receive the past impressions or memories of your spirit, because the material is like a thick veil that does not permit entry into the spirit's life. What mind could receive the images and impressions that the spirit has gathered in the trajectory of its past? What intelligence could coordinate with human ideas that which is incomprehensible? For all these reasons, until now I have not permitted you to know who you are spiritually, nor what your past has been. All my works have been written by me in a book entitled Life. The number of pages is uncountable, its wisdom is infinite, and other than by God, who is the author, it may not be obtained by anyone. But there on every page is written a limited summary in which the Father has delineated every one of his works in order to place it within reach of every understanding. You too are writing the book of your life, in which are written all of your works and each one of your steps on the long road of evolution. That book will be written in your conscience, and it will be the light of knowledge and experience with which tomorrow you will illuminate the paths of your younger brothers. You cannot yet present your book to anyone, because even you do not know its contents. But soon there will be light in your being, and you will be able to show your brothers the pages that tell of your development, your restitution, and your experiences. You will then be an open book for humanity. Blessed are those who take possession of their mission. They will feel themselves ascending the ladder that Jacob saw in his dreams, which is the spiritual road that leads beings to the presence of the Creator. Love as a requirement for spiritual development. Just as your body requires air, the sun, water, and bread to live, so too the spirit needs the environment, the light, and the sustenance of its own being. When it is deprived of the freedom to elevate itself in search of nourishment, it weakens, withers, and grows dull, like a child made to stay always in its crib and enclosed in its bedroom. Its limbs stiffen, it grows pale, its senses weaken, and its faculties atrophy. See how the spirit can also become paralytic? What if I told you that the world is full of the paralyzed, the blind, the deaf, and ill in spirit? The spirit that lives closed off, without freedom to develop itself, is a being that does not grow, not in wisdom, nor in strength and virtue. Truly, I tell you, that which can elevate you is love, for in it exists wisdom, sentiment, and elevation. Love is a compendium of all the attributes of the divinity, and God has lit that flame in every spiritual creature. How many lessons I have given so that you would learn to love? How many opportunities, lives, and reincarnations the divine mercy has provided. The lesson has been repeated as many times as necessary, until it is learned. Once it is obeyed, there is no need to repeat the lesson, for it cannot be forgotten. If you learn my lessons quickly, you will no longer have to suffer, nor weep for your errors. A being that takes advantage of the lessons received on earth may return to the world, but each time with more advancement and in better conditions. Between one life and another there is always a respite, which is necessary to meditate and rest before beginning the new task. Various reasons for the reincarnations. Truly, I tell you that in no epoch of human life has man lacked knowledge of my law, for he has never lacked a glimmer in his spirit, an intuition in his mind, or a presentiment in his heart from the divine spark, which is his conscience. Nonetheless, your spirit has turned toward the beyond, wearing a blindfold of darkness, and I tell you that he who does not make use of the lessons contained in the life of this world, the veil of trials, shall have to return to it to finish his restitution, and above all, to learn. In other worlds, the spirits also enjoy free will, and they sin and lose the way, or persevere in the good, and therefore manage to ascend, just as you do on Earth. But at the indicated moment, those destined to come to this world descend to it either to fulfill a noble mission or to atone in restitution. According to their desire to see this earth, it will seem to some a paradise, and to others a hell. And that is why, when they understand the mercy of the Father, they see only a marvelous life, sowed with blessings and teachings for the Spirit, a road that brings them closer to the promised land. Some leave this world desiring to return, others do so with the fear of having to. This is because your being has not yet learned to understand the harmony in which you must live with the Lord. Let no one rebel at the idea of having to return to this planet in another body, nor think that reincarnation is a punishment for the spirit. All spirits destined to live on the earth have had to pass through the law of reincarnation in order to achieve their evolution and carry out the mission I have entrusted to them. It is not only the spirits of little elevation that must reincarnate again. The elevated spirits too return time and again, until their work is finished. Elijah is the greatest of the prophets that have come to earth, and in spite of the great works that he did and the great trials that he experienced, he had to return to this world in another time, in another material form, and with another name. This law of love and justice was unknown by humanity for a long time, for if they had known it before, they might have fallen into confusion. Still, the Father made some revelations to you, and he gave you some signs that were the foregoing light of this time, which is the era of the solution of all the mysteries. The road to perfection. Long is the road by which you shall come to the fullness of light. No being has a longer road than that of the Spirit, which the Father, the divine sculptor who shapes and polishes your spirit, gives perfect form. Truly, I tell you, that to come to complete cleanliness, your spirit must yet purify itself much in this world and in the spiritual valley. You will return to this planet as many times as necessary, and the more you fail to make use of the opportunities your Father gives you, the longer will be postponed your definitive entry into the true life, and the longer your stay in the vale of tears. In each earthly existence, every spirit must show its advancement and the fruits of its evolution, making a firm step forward each time. Keep in mind that the only good that rebounds to your own benefit is that which is done out of true love and charity for others, and which is done disinterestedly. In man there are two forces which are always in struggle: his human nature, which is temporary, and his spiritual nature, which is eternal. That eternal being is well aware that very long periods of time will pass for him to be able to reach his spiritual perfection. He anticipates that he will have many existences, and that in them he will go through many ordeals before gaining his true happiness. The spirit foresees that after his tears, pain, and passing many times through bodily death, he will reach the summit which he has always sought in his longing for perfection. On the other hand, the flesh, that weak and small being, weeps and rebels, and sometimes refuses to follow the dictates of the spirit, and only when the latter is evolved, is strong and experienced in the struggle with the flesh and its surroundings, it is able to dominate the flesh and manifest itself through it. Long is the pilgrimage of the spirit, extensive his path, many and quite variable his existences, and his ordeals different at every moment, but while he complies with them, he elevates, purifies, and perfects himself. In his passage through life, he is leaving a trace of light, That is why many times the whims of the flesh are of no concern to the spirit, for he knows that they are temporary, and that he cannot detain his journey by incidents which he regards as insignificant. Momentarily, he fixes his attention on the weaknesses of his body, but he knows that he cannot love very much something that is short-lived and which soon disappears into the bowels of the earth. The universal school of life. Since the beginning of humanity, reincarnation of the spirit has existed as a law of love and justice, and is one of the forms in which the Father has demonstrated his infinite clemency. Reincarnation is not only of this time, but of all times. But do not think that this mystery has not been revealed before now. From the first times, an intuition has existed in man about the reincarnation of the spirit. Yet this humanity, seeking material sciences and the riches of the world, has allowed itself to be dominated by the passions of the flesh, hardening those senses with which the spiritual is perceived, making itself blind and deaf to that which corresponds to the spirit. Before your creation, you were in me. Later, as a spiritual creature, from a place where all vibrates in perfect harmony, where the essence of life and the source of the true light are found, I come to give you sustenance. Pain was not created by the Father. In the times of which I speak, you had no reason to whimper and had nothing to lament. You felt the glory in yourselves, for in your perfect life, you were the symbol of that existence. But when you left that dwelling I gave you vestment to the spirit, you descended further and further. Since then, your spirit has been evolving little by little, until arriving to the plane it now occupies, where the light of the Father shines. The final destination of every spirit is to unite with God after it becomes purified and attains perfection. That is why I fill your path with enlightenment and give strength to your spirit, so that you may ascend step by step. The mansion that you will inhabit in the spiritual valley will be determined by your level of spiritual elevation when you depart from earth, because the universe was created as a school of perfection for the spirit. If I had given you all in this life, you would not now be wishing to ascend another step, but what you have not achieved in one existence, you seek in another, and what you do not reach in that is promised to you in a higher one, and so it goes on infinitely on the endless road of the spirits. When you hear my word, it seems impossible that your spirit might be capable of reaching such perfection, and I tell you that today you doubt the high destiny of the spirit because you only look at what you can see with your material eyes. Smallness, ignorance, and evil. Yet, that is because the spirit of some is ill, while in others it is paralyzed. There are some who are blind, and yet others who are spiritually dead. Before such spiritual misery, you must doubt the destiny that eternity has reserved for you. Thus you live in this time of materialism and love for the world. Yet the light of my truth has come to you to dissipate the darkness of the night and of a time that has already passed, announcing by the light of its dawn the arrival of a new era in which the spirit will receive the illumination of my teaching. Many of you already will not have another opportunity to come to earth to repair your faults. You will not possess that instrument that you have today, which is the body that bears you, and on which you depend. It is necessary that you understand that coming to the world is a privilege for the spirit, never a punishment, and therefore you must make use of this grace. After this life, you will go to other worlds to receive new lessons and there find new opportunities to continue ascending the ladder and perfecting yourselves. If you have completed your obligations as men, you will leave this world with satisfaction for a mission completed, bearing tranquility in your spirit. My voice is calling to the great multitudes, because many spirits are coming to the end of their long pilgrimage on earth. That dejection, that weariness, and that sadness that they bear in their hearts are the evidence that they yearn for a higher dwelling, a better world. Yet, it is necessary that in the last phase of their lives on earth, they live in obedience to the dictates of their consciences, so that the track left by their last steps on earth be a blessing for the generations that later come to perform their various missions in the world. This world is not eternal, nor is there any need for it to be. When this dwelling ceases to have the reason it has now to exist, it will disappear. When your spirit no longer needs the lessons that this life gives, because other, more elevated lessons await it in another world, then, with the light acquired in this struggle, it will say, "How clearly I understand now that all the vicissitudes of this life were only experiences and lessons that I needed in order to understand better. How long this journey appeared to me in the moments when suffering drained my strength. But now, in contrast, when all is in the past, how brief and fleeting it appears before eternity." Be glad, humanity. Think of yourselves as migrant birds that pass through this world full of tears, poverty, and suffering. Be glad that it is not your eternal dwelling place. Better worlds await you. Thus, when you say farewell to this earth, you will do so without bitterness, and here will remain the cries of pain, the work, and the tears. You will say goodbye to this world, and rise up to those higher worlds that await you. From there, you will see the earth as a point in space that you remember with love. The power of conviction of the doctrine of reincarnation. Spiritual enlightenment is revealing to the world the truth, the justice, the reason, and the love that exists in the spiritual gift of reincarnation. Nevertheless, in the beginning, the world will fiercely battle this revelation, labeling it as a strange and false doctrine in order to make men of good faith distrust it. The efforts of the religions to maintain their faithful in the routine of old beliefs and methods beyond their time shall be useless and vain, for none can stop the divine light that penetrates to the depths of understanding, awakening the spirit to an era of revelations, of divine confidences, of clarification of doubts and mysteries, and of spiritual liberation. Nor shall any be able to hold back the torrent that forms when humanity rises in search of its liberty of thought, of the spirit, and of faith. Stages in the reincarnation of a spirit. I am calling all travelers to listen to my voice, which invites them to ascend spiritually and to possess eternal life. In this day in which the divine word makes itself heard, learn from this word and enlighten yourselves with it, for in wisdom is the light and your salvation. If my law teaches you morality, righteousness, and order in all acts of your life, why do you seek adverse paths which bring you pain? And when you depart to the hereafter, leaving your body in the earth, you weep because you have loved the physical body so much. When you feel that the material body no longer belongs to you, and that you must follow the road until you reach me, I have asked you, "Why, child, what gifts do you bring me? Have you lived on the earth obeying my mandates?" And you are ashamed and dejected because you do not bear a gift of love for the one who loves you so much and has granted you so much. You have created chains which crush your spirit, and having lost its grace, your spirit appears without light, weeping and grieving. It hears the voice of the Father who calls, but since it has not evolved, nor feels worthy of coming to him, it hesitates and waits. Time passes, and once again the spirit hears that voice. In the midst of its pain it asks who speaks, and the voice says, "Awaken! Do you not know from where you have come, nor where you go?" Then the spirit rises its eyes and sees an immense light. Before its splendor it sees itself insignificant. It recognizes that before being sent to the earth, it had existed and had been loved by the Father, which is from whom the voice came, and who now, upon seeing him in this painful situation, suffers for it. The spirit knows that it has been sent to different worlds to journey over a difficult path, and has to reach its reward through its merits. The child asks, "If before being sent to earth I have been your beloved creature, why have I not remained virtuous? Why have I had to descend to suffer and work in order to return to you?" The voice replies, "All spirits have been submitted to the law of evolution, and on that road the Spirit of the Father always protects you and is pleased by the good deeds of his Son. Truly, I have sent you to earth in order that you might make of it a dwelling of struggle for spiritual perfection, not a valley of war and pain. I have told you to multiply and not be sterile, and when you return to the spiritual valley and do not bring any harvest, you only weep, arriving without the grace with which I have covered you. That is why I send you one more time and tell you, cleanse yourself, seek that which you have lost, and cultivate your elevation." The spirit returns to earth and seeks a small and tender human body in order to rest in it and begin the new journey. It finds the small child designated to it and unites with that body in order to make restitution for its failings within my law. Knowing what it must do and aware that it belongs to the Father, the spirit comes to the earth, clearly aware of its mission. In its first years, it is innocent. It preserves its purity and remains in contact with the spiritual life. Then it begins to know sin. It looks closely at pride, arrogance, and at the rebelliousness of men before the just laws of the Father, and the flesh, which is stubborn by nature, begins to contaminate itself with evil. Having fallen into temptation, it forgets the mission which it brought to earth and arises performing deeds which are contrary to the law. The spirit and material body eat the forbidden fruits, and when they have fallen into the abyss, the last hour surprises them. Once again the spirit finds itself in the spiritual valley, weary and burdened by the weight of its faults. Then it remembers the voice that spoke to it in another time, which still calls to it, and after much weeping, feeling lost, and not knowing who it is, it remembers that it has already been in that place. Then the Father who has created it with so much love appears on its path, asking, "Who are you? From where do you come, and where do you go?" The Son recognizes in that voice the word of the one who has given it its existence, intelligence, and gifts. The voice of the Father who always forgives, who purifies and removes the darkness and leads to the light. The child trembles because it knows it is before the judge, and speaks, saying, "Father, my disobedience and my debts to you are very great, and I cannot aspire to live in your home, for I have no merits. Today, when I return to the spiritual valley, I see that I have only accumulated faults, for which I must make restitution." But the loving Father once more points out the way, and once again the Spirit incarnates and forms a part of humanity. Now experienced, and with greater strength, it then subdues the material body in order to control it and to obey the divine dictates. The battle begins. The Spirit combats the sins which cause men to fall and wants to take advantage of the opportunity which has been granted for its salvation. It struggles from beginning to end, and when the white hairs shine on the temple, and the body, which before was strong and healthy, begins to slowly stoop under the weight of the years and lose energy, then the spirit feels strong, more developed and experienced. How great and disgusting sin appears to that being! It leaves that sin and reaches the end of its journey. Now it only awaits the moment in which the Father will call it, for it has come to the conclusion that the divine law is just, that the will of God is perfect, and that the Father lives in order to give life and salvation to His children. When the last day comes, it feels death in its flesh and has no pain. It departs silently and respectfully. It contemplates itself in the spirit, and as if it had a mirror before it, sees itself as beautiful and radiant with light. Then the voice speaks to it and asks, "Child, where are you going?" And knowing who it is, it approaches the Father, allows His light to invade its being, and speaks thus, "O Creator, O universal love, I come to you to rest and to give to you the fulfillment of my mission." The account is settled. The spirit is healthy, cleansed, and free of the chains of sin, and sees before it the reward which awaited it. Then it feels that it merges with the light of that Father, that its joy is greater, and it contemplates a mansion of peace, a holy land, and a profound silence. Then it remains at rest in the bosom of Abraham.